Hi class, welcome to your very first flipped lesson of the semester. Now how this is going to work is you are going to follow me through this PowerPoint labeled government and the state. You are going to fill in the appropriate concepts with supplementary information, and then at the very end of this lesson you will be asked to use the Google Doc link that is posted on your Edmodo page to prove your comprehension of some of the concepts that were described in the PowerPoint. So let's get started. The first concept that we're going to talk about is the state. Over the course of history, the state has emerged as the dominant political unit. And in order for something to qualify as a state, they must have four components. The first is people. They must have citizens that live within their defined territory. They must also have an organized government, and they must also have authority to enforce their laws. That means that they must be independent from any other country, any other state, any other political entity to enforce their laws. Now, the first question that you're going to be asked to discuss in your Google Doc is this one. One of these two pictures qualifies as a state. Which one and why? Okay, so use the previous definition to help you answer that question once you finish this PowerPoint and you are logged onto your Google Doc. All right, now what set of circumstances first brought the state into existence? Well, there's no conclusive answer. Historians dispute this question all the time. However, out of this question, four theories have emerged. The first is the force theory. According to the force theory, one person or a small group of people claimed control over an area and forced all within it to submit to their rule. The second theory is the evolutionary theory. This theory states that the state developed naturally out of the early family, meaning that in every family there is one head of the household. This came to symbolize government, and as time went on, this model of the family having the head of the household kind of replicated into the government, where now we have a person or a group of people that act as the head of the state, and that this happened naturally. The third theory is the divine right theory. This dominated Western thought for a very long time. This theory states that God created the state, and that God gave those of royal birth a right to rule, and that the people were then bound to obey these rulers as they would God. The final theory is called the social contract theory, and this has most influenced our American political system. This was established by a number of well-known philosophers, Locke, Hobbes, Rousseau, and what these philosophers stated is that before the state came into existence, people lived in a state of nature, where really their safety was dependent on their strength and their intelligence. Now, people lived in a state of fear. Therefore, people began to give up their freedoms in order to overcome this unpleasant condition, and they were able to give up as much power as was needed in order to promote their safety and the well-being of all. And so this is really, this theory is really founded in a lot of American principles, such as limited government, that government only has the power that the people give to it. This theory also has ingrained in it the idea of popular sovereignty, that people are the means of governmental power. And so this theory really snowballed and really is very evident in the Declaration of Independence, where Thomas Jefferson writes, you know what? We as colonists are overthrowing your form of government, Great Britain, because King George has overstepped this social contract, and he's taking more power than we, the people, are willing to give. All right, now there are many different forms of government throughout the world, and there are three questions used to classify these major forms of government that either have existed or do exist in the world today. And those three questions are, first, who can participate in government? This is a very hot button question. People get very emotional over this question in terms of who can participate in government. The second is, how is power geographically distributed in government? Meaning, where is the physical power of government evident? And then 3, what is the relationship between the legislative and executive branches of government? Now, I want to be very clear about these 3 questions, is that one country may have different forms of government in terms of these questions. And I will point out what I mean by that as I progress through this lesson. So the first question we're going to look at is who can participate. When it comes to this question, there's really 2 main forms of government that emerge. The first is democracy, and the definition of democracy is that the people give government its power. Now, within this umbrella term of democracy, there are 2 different types of democracy. There's direct democracy, which really doesn't exist in a large scale anymore. The most well-known direct democracy existed in Greece. And really, this is the type of democracy where citizens vote directly on public policy. So really, direct democracy only really exists in small scales today, more local units of government, like in a town. For example, there's a town in New Hampshire where citizens are very involved in their town's government, and they will go to directly vote on whether or not they're going to improve this road or whether or not they're going to build this bridge. And the citizens are the ones that are directly voting on that public policy. But like I said, this really doesn't exist in large scale anymore, only small scale. The second type of democracy or category of democracy would be indirect democracy. And this is the type of government that we have in the United States. We citizens elect representatives to represent our concerns and opinions in government. So this allows for a democracy to still exist in a large scale. A problem with this form of government is that it takes a very long time, and because of the large scale nature of this government, people tend to feel detached from this form of democracy. But this is the type that we have here in the United States, and we elect senators and House representatives who serve in our legislative branch. We also elect our president, who enforces the laws in our country. All right, now to answer who can participate in the opposite way of the people would be a dictatorship. Those in power hold absolute authority, meaning that the people that are the citizens of a country in a dictatorship don't have the ability to interact in their government the way that those in a democracy do. There's 2 different categories of a dictatorship. One type of dictatorship is an autocracy. This is where only one person holds absolute power. An example of this in present day is North Korea. They have an autocracy where the leader Kim Jong-un is absolute ruler. There is no other group besides him that rules the country and enforces the laws and makes the laws. The second type of dictatorship is oligarchy. This is where a small elite group of people hold unlimited power. So really the only difference between autocracy and oligarchy is the amount of people that have a role in government. In autocracy it's one, in oligarchy it's a small group. The second question that helps us to classify major forms of government that have existed or do exist in the world today is, what is the geographic distribution of power? This is where students tend to get most confused, so please take very diligent notes on this section. When I say geographic distribution of power, I mean where is the physical symbolism of power held, or the physical power of government held. The first is a unitary government, and this is where all powers held by the government belong to a single central body. The central body creates local units of government for their convenience, but still, like the previous point above shows, the central body holds all the power. This type of government exists in Great Britain, where you have Parliament, which is the single central body. They hold all power. They make all laws for the entire country. Now, they have small local units of government that enforce those laws, but those local units of government can't make their own laws and can't have different laws from Parliament's laws. The second is federal government. This is where governmental power is divided between a central government and local governments. Both levels act directly and have laws of their own. This type of government exists in the United States, where we have the federal government of the United States, which exists in Washington, D.C., and consists of the executive branch, which is the president and his cabinet, the legislative branch, which is the House of Representatives and the Senate, and then the judicial branch, which exists, which is the Supreme Court and all lower federal courts. But we also have a state government where those same three branches exist. We have an executive, which is our governor. We have a legislative branch, which is our House and Senate in Springfield. And we have a judicial branch, which enforces state laws. And so we have both of these two levels, and they act directly, and they have their own laws, and the power is divided between the two. The last is a confederation. This is an alliance of independent governments with a weak central body. The central body only handles matters that the independent governments assign to it. And this form of government existed during the Civil War, where we had the Confederacy. Now, this alliance of independent governments usually are states. The European Union is an example of a confederation today, and these states are very strong and they have their own set of laws that cannot be infringed upon by other states. However, they also have an umbrella, a central body that only handles matters that the independent governments as a whole decide to assign to it. So here you can just see that there's a spectrum of where power lies in government. And this is answering in terms of a strong central government or strong state governments or strong smaller governments. And so it just kind of depends on where that power lies. The third question is, what is the relationship between the executive and legislative branches of government? One type of government that answers this question is a presidential government. This is where the executive and legislative branches are separate but equal, meaning that citizens elect members of both branches. However, each branch can block the actions of the other branches. So for example, this is also a form of government that we have in the United States. And the executive branch can block the actions of the legislative branch by vetoing a law proposed by Congress. In the same way, Congress can actually override a presidential veto. So they can block each other's actions. And this is all described in our Constitution, which we'll be getting more in depth with later in the semester. Now, a different form of government that has a different relationship between the executive and legislative branch is parliamentary. This is where the legislative branch is elected by citizens. So that's similar to a presidential government, where we as citizens would go and elect legislators. However, the key difference here in terms of the relationship between the two is that in an executive, the executive is then chosen by the legislature and is subject to its direct control. So this style of government is found in Great Britain, and the parliament is the legislative branch. The parliament is elected by the citizens, but then the parliament chooses its prime minister, who is the executive. People do not elect this person like they do in a presidential. This person is chosen by the legislature. All right, so that wraps up our lecture for today. Now what you're going to do is you're going to log on to the Google Doc link that is attached to your Edmodo page, and you're going to use the information that we've just covered to answer some questions and come prepared with that in class on Tuesday. I hope you're having a great Labor Day weekend, and I look forward to seeing you all on Tuesday.